This Torah class is brought to you by TorahAnytime.com.
Good afternoon and Gemar Chasima Tova. I've made far trips in my life. I've gone literally to the other end of the world. I think the furthest location that I traveled to give a shiur is Australia. It's a schlep and a half. Actually, I have a magnet collection at home. My favorite magnet is Australia. What a schlep. First you have to go to Los Angeles. And then you sit there in the airport and you get a connecting flight and it's another 16 hours from there till you get down under. And I don't know about you, but when I'm sitting on a plane, for an hour I get stir crazy. I don't know what to do with myself. I can't even sit so long. 7 hours and then 16 hours, it's a very long trip. And I've taken short trips in my life. Last Thursday, I was slated to speak in Cleveland. My flight was scheduled for 2:10. And I'm sitting there on the runway. 10 minutes pass, 20 minutes pass, a half hour passes, an hour passes, 2 hours pass. We need a route, a reroute, there's weather. I don't know what they're talking about. Weather from here to Cleveland, it was 90 degrees outside last Thursday. They made up this thing, there's a hurricane, it never happened. And I'm sitting on the runway for 3 hours. Then they said they needed more fuel, so we headed back to the gate, and then a guy gets on the plane and he says, okay, flight is canceled. So I never even made it to Cleveland. So sometimes you could travel to the other end of the world, and it takes a very long time. Sometimes you want to make it next door, you can't even get there. Friends, we are embarking on a very great journey. We're about to make an attempt to reach the Kisei HaKavod, to reach HaKadosh Baruch Hu. It's a long trip. It's a daunting trip. From here, down here in this world, all the way up to God, that's where we're all headed. We're trying to get there on Yom Kippur. How are we going to get there? How are we going to make sure we have enough fuel? How are we going to make sure there's no traffic, there's no weather? How are we going to reach HaKadosh Baruch Hu? Did you ever realize that Yom Kippur begins with Kol Nidre? We start Kol Nidre with this sentence, with this pasuk. You know what pasuk we say the night of Yom Kippur? Aher zaru alat tzadik uli yishrei lehev simcha. You remember that pasuk? That's the opening line of Yom Kippurim. Ar zarua latzadik u'leyishrei leiv simcha. Ask around. Nobody understands why we say this pasuk. Why do we kick off Yom Kippur? You know, the kickoff of Yom Kippur, Ar zarua latzadik u'leyishrei leiv simcha. So actually, some offer as follows. You ready? Watch this. I want you to picture in your mind's eye for a moment the pasuk. Oyer, Zarua, Latzadik, Uleyishrei, Leiv, Simcha. We're now going to take the Soifei Tevois, the last letter of each word. The last letter of Or is a Resh. Zarua, Ayin, Latzadik, Kuf, Uleyishrei, Yud, Leiv, Vez, Simcha, Hey, Rabbi Akiva. Did you know that? It's a remez to Rabbi Akiva in the opening moments of Yom HaKippurim. Rabbi Akiva was a great man. Why do we talk about him in the opening moments of Yom Kippur? You know, it's interesting. We're probably all familiar with the account of the death of Rabbi Akiva. We know the Romans made a decree that nobody could teach Torah publicly, and Rabbi Akiva flagrantly, openly taught Torah. And his students asked, "You're teaching Torah at a time like this?" And Rabbi Akiva said, "Torah is our life. If we don't teach Torah now, we have no future." Rabbi Akiva was taken. They raked his flesh with combs of steel. But the Gemara does not tell us when Rabbi Akiva was killed. However, there's a medrash. The medrash teaches us that Rabbi Akiva died on Yom HaKippurim. So actually, if you put these two accounts together, where Rabbi Akiva died, what was Rabbi Akiva doing at the time of his demise? He was saying the Shema. We always think Rabbi Akiva was saying the Kriya Shema Shel Shacharis, of the morning. But no, according to the Medrash, we see Rabbi Akiva passed away the night of Yom HaKippurim. And therefore it's suggested we begin Yom Kippur with a secret hesped eulogy for Rabbi Akiva, who died at that moment. Or Zarua Lat Sadik Ule Yishrei Leiv Simcha. In fact, one of the great all-time leaders of the Jewish people in the last 300 years, Rav Moshe Sofer, Chassam Sofer, he began every Kol Nidrei Drasha speaking about Rabbi Akiva. And Chassam Sofer pointed out, of all the great Tanoim, the sages of the Tanaitic period, which Tana reveals to us the power of Yom Kippur? He makes the following statement: Ashreichem Yisrael, fortunate are the Jewish people. Lifnei mi atem mitaharim, who purifies you on Yom Kippur? Umi mitaher eschem, before whom are you purifying yourself? Avichem shebashamayim, it's your father. Who remembers who made that statement? Amar Rabbi Akiva. We see Rabbi Akiva was connected to the soul of Yom Kippur. If anyone understood Yom Kippur, it's the great Tana Rabbi Akiva. Rabbi Akiva is Yom Kippur. He passed on Yom Kippur. We begin the day mentioning Rabbi Akiva. Maybe Rabbi Akiva has an insight for us how we're going to get to the Kisei HaKavod. I'll tell you something personal. I knew I was coming to speak here in Hank, and I had the privilege of being with Rabbi Holkauer over Rosh Hashanah and hearing his beautiful tefillos. And I'm trying to remember Hank, I was a rabbi in Queens, and when I first got married, I davened in a shul, Rabbi Savitsky's shul. I remember I used to go to the 8 o'clock minyan, and sitting next to me for about 3 to 4 years, every single morning was an older tzaddik that I became very close with, Rabbi Shlomo Warman. I became very, very close with Rabbi Warman. So close that when his wife passed away, I had the privilege. He came to my house for Shabbos meals. Even one time, I had the zechus to tie his shoes. I'll never forget that. At the very end of his life, I had the merit to tie his shoes. And he would always tell me about Hank and Reb Blazer Silver and the Rav, and how he would walk across the bridge to learn with Rav Moshe Feinstein once a week personally. And he would tell me about, and when Rabbi Warman passed away, I want to tell you something, when I started writing Svarim, I was an amateur. Rabbi Warman personally edited my first articles that I ever wrote. He sent it into the Hama'ar to get it published. That was the beginning of my publishing career. He gave me, I actually have manuscripts of his that he wrote that either he did publish, he didn't publish. And when he passed away, his family gave me a lot of his personal svarim. I forgot to bring it this morning. Rabbi Warman once said, in the name of the Satmar Rebbe, here we are, we're in the time of Teshuva, and we ask ourselves, how are we going to get to the throne of glory? How are we going to reach Hashem? Hashem is what number? What number is the numerical value of Yud Kei Vav Kei? 26. How are we going to reach from point 0 to 26? So Rabbi Warman would say, the pasuk says, Tashev Enosh Adaka. God positions man Daka, Dalid, Chaf, Aleph, 25. He puts us all the way up to number 25. And then he says, all you need to do is Batoimer Shuvu, just jump up to me. It's only one step. You don't have to jump up 21 steps. I put you up to number 25. You just have to reach to the finish line. Let's explain that further. I'm going to share with you now, but I need your undivided attention because you're never going to hear this again. A revolutionary type of gematria. This is not amateur gematria here. This is like gematrios on steroids, okay? It's well known. We know every Hebrew letter is ascribed a certain value. Aleph is 1, Beis is 2, Gimel is 3, Tes is 9, Yud is 10, Chaf is 20, and so on and so forth. There's a system of gematria. If you break up a word the following way, I'll give you an example for starters. Rashi says in Parshas Kisavai that Moshe Rabbeinu translated the Torah Ba'er Heitev, very well. Says Rashi, how well? Rashi says 70 languages. Art Scroll's already up to English, French, maybe some things in Russian. I've seen Persian translations. They don't have 70 translations yet of any Chumash or Gemara. Moshe translated the Torah into 70 languages. So the Mefarshim are troubled. Where did Rashi get this from? How do you see that Moshe translated the Torah into 70 languages? One of the most important commentaries on Chumash is the Mizrahi. The Mizrahi was a Rishon. I had the privilege last January to go to Turkey, where the Mizrahi is buried. The Mizrahi uncovers the following sensational gematria. If you take the word Heitev, Hey, Yud, Tes, Vez, and you do the following. Hey is 5. Hey, Yud, 15. Hey, Yud, Tes, 24. Hey, Yud, Tes, Vez, 26. 5, 15, 24, 26, 70. That's where Rashi got it from. Rashi was able to analyze the word Heitev and break it down. First letter, first 2 letters, first 3 letters, 4 letters, add it up. That's where Rashi got it from. So I'm going to share with you a Kabbalistic insight into Teshuva. You're going to get this. Watch this. The Gemara tells us, you know how powerful Teshuva is? Gedoyla Teshuva shemagas ad kisei hakavod. Teshuva is great. It reaches the throne of glory. How does it get there? You ready for this? Take the words kisei hakavod, throne of glory. Kaf samach aleph. Kaf samach aleph hey. Kaf samach aleph hey chaf. Kaf samach aleph hey chaf vez. Kaf samach aleph hey chaf vez vav. Kaf samach aleph hey chaf vez vav daled equals 713 tshuva. That's the source, says Rav Shamshin of Astropoli. How our sages know how powerful tshuva is, that it reaches all the way to the Kisei HaKavod. It's unbelievable, remarkable. But we learn something very important from here. You know what we see from here? There's only one way to get to the Kisei HaKavod. Little by little by little by little. First you do the kaf, then you do the kaf samach, then you do the kaf samach aleph. Nobody got to the Kisei HaKavod by jumping and hopping and skipping and flying, inch by inch by inch. The only way we grow in this world is little tiny increments. That's the only way it's going to happen. And do you know who taught the Jewish people how microscopic levels of growth add up to tremendous, tremendous accomplishments? There was a man who was 40 years old who had really never accomplished much in his life. He was not successful in learning, and he was not successful in life. And he was walking by a well, and he sees a hole in the rock. And he asks himself, how in the world is there a hole in this powerful rock? and he sees the water dripping on the rock. And he's sort of bewildered because not one drop carved out any noticeable difference in the rock. But he made the following observation. Obviously, even though I can't see the impact that every drop is having on the rock, but drop after drop after drop, it's making an imprint, it's making an impact. Maybe if I go back to learn, I might not see what it's doing to me today. I might not see what it's doing to me this year, but little by little by little, if I apply myself, it's going to catapult me to great heights. We try to change ourselves over Rosh Hashanah Yom Kippur. Lasting change comes in tiny, tiny pieces. Sometimes it could be, maybe when I get home, from now on, I'm going to learn 5 extra minutes a day. Maybe I'm going to come 2 minutes earlier to the tefillah. Maybe this year, I'm going to make sure not to bring my phone with me into the davening. Small, important steps change the course of a person's life. A few weeks ago, I was invited to speak in Panama. So once I was there, I figured I'm not going to pass up the opportunity. I'm going to go to one of the 7 wonders of the world, Panama Canal. Okay? It was a blazing hot day. Before the Panama Canal, if you want to transport goods, let's say from New York to California, you want to put it on a boat, the boat has to go 8,000 miles all the way down around the southern tip of South America, Cape Horn, all the way back up to get to California. It takes weeks and weeks and weeks. So they made a marvel of engineering. They carved a hole through a country. They chiseled away at the mountains in Panama, and they opened up the Atlantic to the Pacific. But, we still got a problem. Because the Atlantic Ocean and the Pacific Ocean are not on the same level. Actually, we have to figure out how we're going to lift up a ship to get from one ocean to the next 85 meters in the air. So you say, not a problem. We'll take cranes and we'll lift up the ship. Did you know you can't even take 10 cranes to lift up one of these ships? You know how heavy? There was a Norwegian sailor, a Norwegian cruise ship. It weighed 168,000 tons. There is no human way possible to lift it up from one ocean to the other. So how do they do it? Simple. You would think the Panama Canal uses a lot of technology. There's no technology. How do they get one ship from one water level to the next? Very simple. It's called gravity. They flood the canal, and the water enters, millions and millions of gallons enter, and all of a sudden you're sitting there, and in 8 minutes, their Norwegian cruise ship raises up 85 meters in the air. What is raising up that ship? What crane? What mechanism? You know what's doing it? The most powerful element in this world. Water. Water. The water floods the small area, and the ship just rises. And I said to myself, what if Rabbi Akiva was standing here at the Panama Canal? What would Rabbi Akiva say if he saw this? Maybe Rabbi Akiva would make the following argument, Kal v'chomer, that if water, which is so soft, could lift up 168,000 tons, then imagine me, little old me. Who am I? What am I? I'm just a young man, a young woman. Maybe I feel bogged down. Maybe I'm heavy. Maybe I feel sullied. How am I going to ever reach the heavens? The answer is the Torah is so powerful that if you apply yourself, you dedicate yourself, you focus on it, you give it your attention, you give it your emotion, you give it your heart, the Torah could elevate you to the highest heavens. Maybe that's what Rabbi Akiva would have said if he was at the Panama Canal. You know what the secret of Rabbi Akiva was? You ever study the word Akiva? Ayin, Kuf, Yud, Vez, Aleph or He? The Mekubalim tell us, the Ben Ish Chai brings this, Akiva stands for Yesh Kaina Eilamai Bisha Achas. It is possible to acquire the whole world. It is possible to reach the heavens in one moment. This was the essence of Rabbi Akiva. Rabbi Akiva understood that life consists of an inch at a time, a moment at a time, a line at a time, an idea at a time. And that's how you get to the highest of heavens. So last Thursday, I'm in JFK. I'm headed to Cleveland. And I've already been on enough trips to know if you could avoid putting luggage on the plane, do it at all costs. Because it's like 50-50. I would say it's like gambling, right? Giving your luggage to the pilot or the airline, it's like 50-50 you're ever going to see it again. I've been to many places. I went to France. Where's my luggage? It went to Orlando. I went to Alaska. Where's my luggage? Also Orlando. They like to send your possessions to Orlando. Now, how long does it take to see again? It could take anywhere between a week and 6 months. If you don't want something, put it in your suitcase. So I had this great plan. I'm going to Cleveland. I'm only spending the night there. I didn't really need that much stuff. My wife got me a brand new wheelie that you put on the plane. In other words, I don't have to put it under the plane. I could hold it in my hand. Okay, this way I don't have to check in any luggage. Fine, I have this down pat. So I'm going through security in JFK. I have a few items. I have my knapsack, because in my knapsack I have my notes for the shiur I was giving, and I had this brand new wheelie. Here's the problem. It was the first time I was using the wheelie. I wasn't used to traveling with it. So I go through security. I'm walking out. I have my knapsack. I have another item. It was a very hot day. I get a drink. I'm sitting by the gate. I say, where's my wheelie? I said, what's in my wheel? Oh, my talis and tefillin. I can't believe. Now, if you don't know where your suitcase is in an airport, you're in big trouble. The likelihood of you ever seeing it again is like nil. If you leave a suitcase unattended in an airport, they blow it up or something. I don't know. They have special procedures. Or if you get it back, it could take 5 to 7 years or something. If you ever took a look at the lost and found in an airport, it's like a room like this with just suitcases. And by the way, they make sure to rip off your name tag when they get it. So how am I going to ever find this suitcase? What am I going to do? My talis and tefillin are there. So I thought maybe I left it in the concession stand where I got a drink. I go there. Did you see a suitcase? No, they didn't see a suitcase. I can't believe it. I didn't take it out from security. I run back to security. Anybody who knows me, I love Rabbi Meir Balanes. I'm a lakad Meir Aneni. Whatever I need to do. All the prayers, all the tefillahs. I run back to security. One conveyor belt. Suitcase is not there. Another conveyor belt. Then there's this table in between the two conveyor belts. And there is my suitcase. Nobody touched it for 40 minutes. I was very grateful. I got on the plane. I waited on the runway for over 3 hours. And then it was canceled. And I'm thinking to myself, why did I need to go through this experience? If the flight needed to be canceled, I ended up giving the shiur for Cleveland on Zoom. Why did I need to be in the airport for 3 hours? And I realized Rebbeinu Shalom was reminding me a very important message. One time I took my boys to Eretz Yisrael. My son left his coat on the plane. We were in the airport. Oh, could you go back on the plane to get your coat? No, you can't go back. You know why? Because the plane is a different country. You actually need a visa. You need a green card to go back onto the plane and get your coat. But I was able to get my suitcase in this case. You know why? Because I was still in the airport. And when you're still in the airport, you could find your suitcase. And Rebbe Shem was reminding me, as long as we're still here in this world, you could go back and find your suitcase. You could think back into your lifetime and say, maybe there's certain things that I'm doing I could improve upon. Maybe there's certain things that I've done in my past that I need to correct. I need to regret. I need to change. I need to improve upon. If you're still in the airport, if we're still here in this world. The days of the Aseres Yemei Teshuva, the days of Yom Kippurim, of Rosh Hashanah, and the days in between are the most important days of our life. Each day corresponds. Today is Wednesday. On today, Wednesday, we could correct every Wednesday of our entire life. Because we're still in the airport. That's something always to remember. We're here in this world. Hashem is giving us a great opportunity. You could still find your suitcase. You could still go back in time. We could still make the changes and adjustments that we need to make. Yesh kaina aylamai b'sha achas. In this world, small increments, small steps, small movements, it could catapult us all the way to the heaven. Thank you very much for this great opportunity. I wish everyone a Gemar Chasimah.
Just before we thank you so much for the lesson. Inspirational. And how amazing is it that Rabbi Glatstein's Drasha was based on Rabbi Warman, who was a legendary Rebbe. You can ask all your fans about Rabbi Warman, who was a Rebbe for so many years. He was a Rosh Hashanah. Sorry, I didn't know that. I'm like down on Hank trivia. Sorry. Not just trivia. Okay, whatever. I'm going to go on to the next one. All right. Also, Mom, you can actually do Chazar on the Shiur because this Shiur is going to be on Torah anytime very soon. Then you can listen to Rabbi Glatstein's Shiurim like many people do on Torah anytime. And with that, on tomorrow's Hayom, or I can send it to you, do it on the WhatsApp as well, be a link to Rabbi Glatstein's Sefer on Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur. Beautiful, and most appropriate way to be able to prepare for the end. So we'll send you that link, and I'm casually waiting for instructions on how we're going to go about the next part. Okay, girls, you can desist through that door exclusively. Watch the camera. And boys, wait 1 second.
You've just experienced another Torah class brought to you by TorahAnytime.com.